So you think you're having a bad day at the office? We've all been there. But before you complain about the terrible Wi-Fi or that meeting that definitely could have been an email, let's just take a quick trip back in time. We're going to look at some medieval jobs that would make your worst Monday feel like a tropical vacation. Let's dive in. Seriously, what's the worst part of your job right now? A slow computer? That coworker who heats up fish in the microwave? Well, as we're about to see, it's all about perspective. Yeah, see, back in medieval times, a bad day was on a completely different level. Instead of bad Wi-Fi, you were dealing with, oh, I don't know, boiling mercury. And that annoying coworker? Try a 700-pound lion who's looking at you like your lunch. Let's start with a job that was a real shot in the dark. First up, let's meet the alchemist. You can think of these guys as the original mad scientists. They were chasing some pretty big dreams: turn lead into gold, whip up a cure for every disease, and maybe live forever. The only problem? Nobody had a clue what they were actually doing. Their whole process was pretty much just trial and error, except it was mostly error. It basically went like this. You mix some mysterious, probably toxic stuff together, you heat it up, and then, well, you discover a brand new, very exciting way to die. I mean, the list of workplace hazards was just insane. You've got beakers spontaneously exploding. You're breathing in mercury and arsenic fumes all day in a tiny room with no windows. Your only safety goggles? Just squinting really hard and hoping for the best. And hey, if all of that didn't kill you, your neighbor could just get you burned at the stake for witchcraft. Fun. Okay, so maybe playing with explosive chemicals isn't your thing. Fair enough. How about a nice, cushy job working with animals for the king? Sounds kind of prestigious, right? Nope. Wrong. It was basically a death sentence with a fancy royal seal on it. So this all kicked off back in 1235, when King Henry III got a gift of 3 lions. And he thought this was the coolest thing ever, right? So he starts this whole collection of wild animals right there in the Tower of London. But who do you think got the job of taking care of these feral, angry beasts? Not animal experts, no. It was just cheap, expendable labor. And yeah, this quote we pulled, it really paints a picture. These were not your local petting zoo animals. These were wild, probably starving, and kept in rickety cages. One wrong move, and your career and your life was over in the most gruesome way you can possibly imagine. The thing is, the danger came from everywhere. The animals themselves could just break out and tear you apart. Getting a claw to the face was just another Tuesday. And if, by some miracle, you survived the animals, but one of them got sick, the king's punishment might actually be worse than getting mauled. All right, let's leave the fancy, dangerous royal court and head down, way down, into the muck and filth of medieval streets. Especially during the Black Plague, one job was always hiring: the rat catcher. And trust me, it was every bit as awful as it sounds. So imagine your daily to-do list is just hunting down rats that are literally crawling with the plague. This means you're constantly getting bit, you're constantly covered in fleas jumping from rat to human, and sometimes you had to literally wade through sewage pits to find their nests. Just so many horrible ways for your day to go wrong. So up to this point, the dangers have been kind of obvious, right? Like explosions, lions, plague-infested rats. You get the picture. But what about the jobs that looked completely safe on the outside? You know, the quiet, respected, maybe even holy jobs? Well, turns out they had their own special ways of killing you too. Let's talk about the bell ringer. I mean, sounds pretty straightforward, right? A really important job, actually. You're the town clock, you call people to church, you mark big events. How on earth could that be dangerous? Well, for starters, the noise. We're talking 120 decibels. Every single ring. Just feet from your head. That's way past the point of causing permanent, irreversible hearing damage. And to give you some perspective on that, that's louder than Taylor Swift's private jet taking off right next to you. And of course, they didn't have earplugs back then. The prevailing wisdom was just, you'll get used to it. Which, of course, really meant you'll just go deaf. And if going deaf wasn't enough, you were basically playing tug of war with a chunk of metal that weighs several tons. One wrong move and you could get crushed, get tangled in the ropes and accidentally hanged, or just fall out of the tower. I mean, even modern bell ringers report these injuries, so imagine what it was like with zero safety measures. But here's the crazy part. The #1 killer for bell ringers, it wasn't the bell, it wasn't the ropes, it was lightning. See, back then, people actually thought that ringing the bells during a thunderstorm would scare the storm away. So you, the poor bell ringer, were ordered to climb a tall tower and yank on a wet rope attached to a giant piece of metal during an electrical storm. Yeah, it went about as well as you'd think. Okay, so we've had death by chemicals, death by animal, death by disease, and death by, well, physics. But now, get ready for the most surprising one of all, the medieval desk job, the quiet, humble scribe. Right? Finally, a safe job. No explosions, no lions, no lightning. What could possibly go wrong? You're just sitting there writing all day. It's gotta be the safest job in the world. Well, not quite. The dangers were just a lot slower. Turns out, the very tools they used every single day were poison. To get those incredibly beautiful, vibrant colors in the manuscripts, they used inks that were loaded with heavy metals. That bright red? Mercury. Those greens and yellows? Arsenic. The crisp white? Lead. And you're handling this stuff day in and day out. And that's just the poison. Then you have the sheer physical toll of the job. You're hunched over a desk for years, completely ruining your eyesight, giving yourself chronic back pain and even spinal deformities. The endless writing caused crippling carpal tunnel. It was just a slow, agonizing breakdown of the body and the mind. You know, what's really fascinating is that scribes would sometimes leave these little notes in the margins of their manuscripts, little windows into their world. This one, from an 8th century scribe, just perfectly captures how a job that only uses 3 fingers can exhaust your entire body. But my absolute favorite note, the one that really just transcends time, comes from another scribe. After finishing some huge, long text, he summed up his entire professional experience with these 3 beautiful, timeless words. It just proves that some feelings about work are totally universal. So the next time you're having a tough day and you're thinking about complaining, just take a second. Remember the alchemist dodging explosions, the menagerie keeper trying not to be lion food, and the scribe slowly poisoning himself. All of a sudden, that endless meeting doesn't seem quite so bad, does it?